When you think about the absolute cutting edge of medicine, you generally picture sterile labs, right? Or precision instruments.
Right, things operating with absolute binary perfection.
Exactly. Like a surgeon's scalpel is either making a cut or it isn't. But when you look at what's happening right now with artificial intelligence in healthcare, that illusion of perfection just completely shatters.
It really does. It's wild.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission for you in this session is to unpack this massive stack of 23 brand new medical research papers. We want to extract the absolute most critical insights about the current state of medical AI.
And looking at this week's literature, it reveals this fascinating, honestly, and almost whiplash-inducing tug of war.
Oh, 100%. Because on one end, we have AI models functioning as fully autonomous drug discovery teams.
Right.
But then at the exact same time, we have AI literally hallucinating breakfast foods like waffles inside of patient CT scans.
Which is terrifying and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
But to truly understand where healthcare is heading for you, the patient, we have to look closely at the methodologies and the authors behind these papers.
Yeah.
We need to analyze how they're solving real-world clinical bottlenecks.
So let's start with a reality check, because before we celebrate all of AI's medical triumphs, we really need to look at where it's failing and, how researchers are catching it in the act.
Yeah, and paper 3 is a perfect starting point. The authors Zhu, Mo, and their team looked at medical multimodal large language models, or MLLMs.
So these are the massive models that handle both images and text, right?
Exactly. And despite their staggering size, these models are actually underperforming compared to older, traditional deep learning in basic image classification.
Wait, really? That feels so counterintuitive. You'd think a bigger brain means better diagnostics.
You would. But the authors mapped the models layer by layer, and they found 4 distinct failure modes. A major one is misaligned semantic mapping.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning the system literally loses the connection between the visual feature it's seeing and the medical vocabulary it knows as the data move through its reasoning layers.
Okay, so the model is essentially acting like a medical student who just memorized the flashcards but completely panics when looking at an actual patient.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It has the right answer somewhere in its parameters, but the wire gets tripped before the output.
And that reliance on memorizing things brings us to paper 21. This is a solo-authored paper by Cucurese, and it introduces this concept called epistemic blinding,
Right.
which to me, it's like an open book test where the student is just reciting memorized facts instead of actually reading the material right in front of them. Like, how do we know the AI is actually analyzing the unique patient data and not just regurgitating its training data?
Well, Cucurese's protocol solves that by literally blinding the AI. During inference, they strip out the entity, identifiers the names of the drugs or genes, and replace them with anonymous codes.
So the AI can't cheat by just recognizing the name.
Exactly. When applied to oncology drug target prioritization, simply hiding the names changed 16% of the AI's top predictions.
Wow. 16% is a massive shift.
Yeah. It proves the AI relies heavily on its pre-trained memory bias rather than the actual chemical data in front of it.
That is wild. And speaking of the AI getting confused, let's look at paper 15 from Luo, Jiang, and Wu. They introduced the medial benchmark.
This one is fascinating because it tests how LLMs handle uncooperative patients.
Now, my initial pushback here was, surely a patient withholding information is the hardest thing for a doctor or an AI to deal with, right? It's like solving a puzzle with missing pieces.
You think so, but the paper found something surprising. It turns out that fabricating symptoms information pollution causes a 1.7 to 3.4 times larger accuracy drop than just withholding information.
Really? So lying to the AI breaks it faster than staying quiet.
Yep. The AI can ask follow-up questions to find missing pieces, but it completely derails when given fake pieces. It just doesn't have that human skepticism.
Okay, so fake data breaks the AI, which is the perfect segue to paper 22 by Emerdaghi and their team, because sometimes the AI makes up its own fake data.
Yes. The waffles.
The waffles. So this team was using diffusion models for CT metal artifact reduction. Basically, fixing the bright streak artifacts you get when a patient has a metal implant.
Right. But without proper domain adaptation, the AI interprets those metallic streaks as natural objects based on its general internet training.
And it literally hallucinated waffles and petri dishes inside the human body. I mean, I can't imagine a radiologist seeing a diner breakfast in a CT scan.
It's absurd. But the authors actually fixed this using multi-reference conditioning, and they only needed 16 to 128 paired examples to do it.
Wow, so a tiny amount of data fixed the hallucination, which transitions us perfectly into section 2. If AI hallucinates without good data, the obvious solution is to feed it better data.
But in medicine, data is highly private. You can't just hand over a hospital's records.
Exactly. But this week's authors have found a brilliant workaround. If you can't use real patient data, you just synthesize it, or you protect it mathematically.
Yeah, let's look at paper 10 by Varner and colleagues. They use something called stochastic attention to generate synthetic pregnant patients to study coagulation dynamics.
Wait, synthetic pregnant patients?
Yeah, they embedded real anonymized profiles into a mathematical space and used Langevin dynamics to interpolate between them.
Langevin dynamics. Okay, break that down for us.
Imagine dropping a marble onto a topographical map and shaking the table. The marble settles into deep valleys, which represent biologically realistic patient profiles.
Oh, I see.
So they were able to amplify rare subgroups, like preeclampsia, without retraining the model. These synthetic cohorts were statistically indistinguishable from real patients.
That is incredible. And we see this with text data, too. Paper 11 by G and team built EMS dialogue. They generated over 4,400 synthetic, multi-speaker emergency medical service dialogues.
Based entirely on real electronic patient care reports.
Right. And paper 5 by Huang and colleagues did something similar for French OSCE's medical student exams. They used LLMs to generate synthetic doctor-patient transcripts.
And the cool thing there is they proved that mid-size AI models could grade these students almost as accurately as GPT-4o.
Just by using high-quality synthetic training data. But what if you don't want to use synthetic data? What if you want to use public data?
That's where paper 4 comes in. Deng and their team built Fundus R1 for reading retinal imaging.
Yeah, and instead of synthetic data, they used AutoG-based method retrieval augmented generation on exclusively public data. They auto-generated reasoning traces and completely bypassed the private data bottleneck.
It's a very elegant solution, but sometimes you do need private data.
Right. Which brings us to federated learning in paper 18 by Saha and Ukwada. I always compare federated learning to a potluck.
A potluck.
Yeah, like the hospitals bring the recipe, the model updates, but they leave the food, the private data at home.
That makes sense.
But my question is, if you add privacy mathematically, doesn't it blur the data and ruin the AI's accuracy? Like if you're looking for a tumor, you need sharp edges.
It's a valid concern. But the authors developed an adaptive differential privacy framework, or ADPFL. It dynamically adjusts the privacy mechanisms.
Meaning it blurs some parts but not others.
Precisely. They maintain rigorous privacy while keeping the boundaries of tumors sharp in CT and MRI scans. It nearly matched non-private models.
Okay, so that solves the data pipeline, which moves us into section 3. Supercharging diagnostics. We have the data, but how are researchers deploying these massive models into fast-paced real-world clinics?
The theme here is definitely extreme efficiency. Take paper 1 by Fat and their large team. They adapted the Dino V3 foundation model for adnexal mass ultrasound segmentation.
And impressively, it maintains state-of-the-art performance even when trained on just 25% of the standard dataset.
It's doing more with less. And paper 2 by Khan and colleagues did something similar with model size. Their MorphDistill method squished the knowledge of 10 different pathology foundation models into one compact encoder.
To predict colorectal cancer survival, that's like compressing 10 textbooks into a pamphlet.
Exactly. And when you can't shrink the model, you have to route the data smarter. Paper 13 by Tian and team introduces the Rome method for whole slide images.
This uses a mixture of experts approach, right?
Yes. Instead of one AI pathway doing everything, it routes specific tissue regions to specialized expert subnetworks.
But how does it know where to send the data without slowing down?
It uses optimal transport routing, so no single expert gets overwhelmed and the compute load stays perfectly balanced.
That's brilliant. And speaking of speed, paper 17 by Lo, Lu, and Lin introduces GPA former for 3D medical image segmentation.
Yeah, that one achieves incredible accuracy with only 1.81 million parameters.
Which means it does its inference in under 1 second on just a normal consumer-level GPU. That's accessible for almost any clinic.
Definitely. But getting models that small usually requires quantization, which can be problematic.
Yeah, I looked at paper 9 by Chen and their team. They talk about their permutation COMQ quantization method. And to me, quantization is like trying to zipline a grand piano into a tiny apartment.
That's quite the visual.
Right. Like if you compress an AI down to 2-bit or 4-bit to fit on a terminal medical device, don't you lose the music, like the critical diagnostic accuracy?
Usually, yes. But this team's ingenious weight-aware strategy avoids that. They actually reorder the weights within the layers to preserve the channel structure.
So they repack the piano so it still plays perfectly.
Basically, yes. It completely avoids the usual accuracy drop. And that kind of speed is crucial. Look at paper 19 by Xi and colleagues. They use 3D Gaussians to track tumors in real time during radiotherapy.
And they reconstruct the MRI volumes in sub-seconds.
Right. And efficiency is also about catching things early. Paper 20 by Mogadami and team use a graph neural network with functional MRI data to predict Alzheimer's progression.
And they achieve nearly 69% accuracy in catching the incredibly tricky transition from cognitively normal to mild cognitive impairment.
Which is huge because those minute structural changes are notoriously hard to catch.
So we've looked at pixels, individual patients, and tight algorithms. Let's zoom out for section 4, the big picture. How does this week's literature scale AI up to manage complex guidelines and entire populations?
Well, paper 14 by Howe and a large collaborative team introduces lung QRI and the LC agent.
Right, because managing lung cancer isn't just one decision. It's a whole complex workflow.
Exactly. And the LC agent acts as a guardrail. It prevents the AI from cascading errors when navigating complex staging and treatment guidelines.
It stops a bad guess in step 1 from ruining step 10.
Yes. And to do that well, AI needs broader context.
Oh, right.
Paper 16 by Fang and team brings up GraphWalker. When AI reasons over electronic health records, it often gets lost in isolated data.
Right, looking at just one patient's string of events.
But GraphWalker incorporates population-level cohort discovery. So the AI sees the forest, not just the trees. It looks at similar patients to inform its reasoning.
That makes a lot of sense. And we see that systems-level thinking applied to administrative guidelines, too. Paper 6 by Sikar and colleagues is super practical.
Oh, this one is great. They automatically converted Japanese diabetic nephropathy guidelines directly into executable BPMN models.
Which are simulation-ready, right.
Yes, and with a 100% ground truth match for well-structured policies.
But, human lives don't always follow a structured policy. Emergencies happen randomly.
Which is why paper 23 by Pandey and Shandola is so important. They use transformer-Hawks processes to model highly irregular patient care trajectories.
Oh, right. Because a severe medical event usually means another one is likely to happen soon, but then the risk decays over time.
Exactly. It balances the math so rare, but critical emergency events aren't ignored just because they don't fit a neat schedule.
It grounds the math in reality. And capturing the nuance of human reality is critical. Let's talk about paper 8 by Chen and team. This is an NLP tool designed to detect HIV-related stigma in clinical notes.
This is a really sensitive application of AI.
It is. And honestly, I was skeptical. Can an algorithm actually understand a complex human emotion like stigma, or is it just doing a fancy keyword search?
It entirely depends on the prompting. The authors found that zero-shot models failed up to 32% of the time.
Just guessing, basically.
Right. But with few-shot prompting, providing detailed examples, models like Gatortron Large successfully categorize nuanced experiences, like negative self-image.
So it actually learned to parse the context of the emotion. That's powerful. And speaking of powerful population-level impact, paper 7 by Adelman and team tackled population health management.
Yes, they used measurized Markov decision processes to optimize scarce treatment allocations ethically.
And the results were incredible. Their policy yielded over 1,500 additional home days annually per 1,000 patients.
Real, measurable improvement in human well-being.
Which brings us to the final paper, paper 12 by Wang, Sinenka, and Brace. They introduce Rhizome OS1.
This one feels like science fiction.
It really does. It's a multimodal AI agent system functioning as a complete semi-autonomous discovery team.
They literally act as computational chemists and patent agents, generating thousands of novel oncology molecules entirely on their own.
Over 91% novel scaffolds. They are inventing completely new drugs.
It's astounding.
So let's wrap this up and connect the dots for you, the listener. We started this deep dive looking at the danger of an AI hallucinating waffles in a CT scan because it lacked medical context.
Great.
But then we saw the incredible promise. We saw synthetic pregnant patients solving data privacy bottlenecks, AI agents functioning as entire drug discovery teams, and mathematical frameworks optimizing population health.
Which really leaves us with a provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, definitely. What's on your mind?
Well, if an AI system like Rhizome OS1 can autonomously invent a completely novel drug, and we can validate the drug's complex biological effects using synthetic patients mathematically generated from systems like stochastic attention.
Yeah.
How long until an AI independently discovers a cure for a disease using data from patients who never actually existed?
Wow. A cure for a disease tested on people who never existed, all to solve a problem that started with a hallucinated waffle. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the data, and we'll catch you next time.